Nerds 365. Welcome back, everybody. That's John McMullen. I'm Rob Ellison for Jody Mack. And look who we have. This guy's fresh to the football scene, John. He's new. He's green. We have to get him up to speed.
Got to get him up to speed.
I know. That is our guy, Paul Domowitch. And you can check out Damo's work. Of course, JAKIBSports.com.
33rd team.
And follow him on Twitter at PDamo. Damo, what's going on?
Not much, guys. How are you doing?
Damo, correct me if I'm wrong. Is this are we at 40 years now covering the NFL and the Eagles in the city of Philadelphia? Are we there yet?
Yeah, I think we're at 41 now.
There we
41.
go.
41.
Right.
Yeah.
Impressive. That is impressive.
Now,
Damo.
when you get to 42, that's really something, Damo.
Yeah, you're not quite there yet, Damo.
Yeah.
Let's go.
1% better every day. What does the head coach say?
Damo, I'll ask you. We were talking about this a little bit earlier. You look at the Eagles' defensive line, which obviously had an unbelievable season last year, 70 sacks, the whole nine. But they did lose a couple of pieces, namely Javon Hargrave. Are they, in your estimation? I mean, I think San Francisco would maybe come to mind, some others, but are they right there in terms of the best in football in your estimation?
Oh, sure. I mean, when you consider what they did last year with the franchise record 70 sacks, which I believe was the third or fourth most in history. I mean, I think a big key is going to be their defensive tackles. Those two young kids, what kind of year Fletcher has. I mean, they need good play inside. If they get that, Josh Sweat will have another 12, another double-digit sack here. Brandon Graham's coming off. I know he's 35, but he's got the advantage of one more year distance from that Achilles. So I think that's going to help him. I think they're fine there. I certainly think it's probably the strength of that defense.
Yeah, then the depth, Damo, they can come at you. I was texting a person. I was telling Rob outside, not with the Eagles, and he was looking over their 90-man roster and said they probably have 16 or 17 and legitimate NFL players that play on the defensive line, which is now he's talking about edge rushers as well. So Hassan Reddick's in that category. Nolan Smith's in that category, despite their designation as linebackers.
Right.
So, I mean, even guys like Kentavious Street, we don't talk about. Derek Barnett's coming back. He's still on this team. That's a legitimate NFL player. They are so deep. Bucky Brooks said they was the best position group, the Eagles' defensive front, in the entire NFL. I was surprised by that. I think Eagles' offensive line first, but they don't have the depth on the offensive line they have on the defensive line. When you're able to go in waves like that, does that help or hinder? Because at times, look, there's a difference between Reddick and Sweat out there than if you're trying just to rotate for the sake of rotating. You think that depth can be a double-edged sword, so to speak?
Well, I think most coaches, John, as you know, I mean, they rotate, but they rotate smartly. I mean, if there's key situations, you're going to have your best people out there. I don't think there's a negative to being able to have the depth to send, groups out there and count reps, because it keeps your best people fresh for the fourth quarter. You look at their sacks last year, so many of them fourth quarter, so many of them third down, key situations. I mean, when you needed to be fresh. So I think it's a plus. I don't see many negatives, as long as you are smart enough to make sure that, you got a key 3rd and 7 late in the game, and maybe it's time to send one of your backups out there. You got you make sure you got Reddick out there.
Hey, Damo, let me ask you, I know the fans aren't going to view it this way. I get that in terms of when I use this terminology of a grace period. But beside the defensive line, you're looking at a linebacker crew that there are questions. You're looking at a safety crew that there are questions, a new defensive coordinator, new coaches on that side of the ball, et cetera. I think it's going to take a little while. And I get that the schedule's maybe a little bit more to their advantage early than it is later, especially after the bye. But Do you view it that way, that it's going to take a minute for the defense to get, to the level it's going to need to be later in the year and into the playoffs?
Well, I think certainly portions of it. When you're replacing 5 starters, no matter how good the people are coming in, it's still going to take a while for everybody to get into sync. I think it's a plus that their 2 corners are, have played together. Well, 3 if you count Avante. So I mean that helps. Linebacker, is linebacker for them. So I think Nakobe Dean will do, I think, a good job of directing things, and he'll be in the right place at the right time. So, if there's a position that might take a while, Rob, it's safety because of the newness back there. I don't know who's going to be the second starter, Sidney Brown, or will it be Blankenship? But I thought this unit was going to be going in to the offseason, I thought they were going to pretty much have to outscore teams this year. Give Howie credit. He did a good job of replacing people, keeping people that nobody thought they could, like Bradbury.
Yep.
They're back to having a very, one of the league's best defenses.
Yeah, I mean, safety, it's interesting because I think you kind of hinted there. I think most people look at it saying maybe it'll be Reed, Blankenship, and if Sidney can beat out Terrell Edmonds. I'm kind of in the camp that no, it's Terrell Edmonds is going to be a starter, and can Sidney Brown beat out Reed, Blankenship? Is that where you are?
Yeah, I completely agree. I thought Edmonds was a good pickup, a durable guy who's missed one game in his entire career.
5-year starter, on a good defense too.
With a very good defense. I think it's between Blankenship and the rookie for that other safety spot. We're going to be seeing a lot of split safety this year. It'll be interesting to see how that works. That's the one position that might take a little bit of time to get in sync.
Damo, how real a threat are the Cowboys? We know they played very well against the Eagles. They had 12 wins last year. The Eagles had the 14 wins. They made some moves. They get Gilmore. They had Brandon Cooks. The big move there, also the shift to McCarthy taking over the play calling, et cetera. How real a threat do you think they are? Because they always seem to be good on paper. They're kind of like the 76ers of the NFL. And then, when it gets real, something happens there. What do you think about that?
Oh, that's an insult. Nicely done, Rob.
Thank you. I knew I'd work a Sixers thing at the first 365. Yes.
I do it every day.
You look at them every preseason, they look like a team that's going to compete for the Super Bowl, and then something goes wrong. I think them and the Giants both will be competitive this year. I don't see the Eagles sweeping them and the Giants, but we got to see what Dak Prescott comes back this year. Is it the one from the past or the one from last year? Brandon Cooks is a terrific player, but there's a reason he's been on 16 teams in the last 5 years.
Yeah, that is weird to me.
But you never hear anything off the field. That's the weird thing, Damo. He's not getting arrested. I don't get it.
I don't get it either. He's a good player. He doesn't get in trouble. And everybody's looking to trade the guy at all the times. He's like, I don't know. Maybe he's like Tobias Harris. I'll go Rob's route.
That's nice.
Crumble cookie.
Good work out of you. Yes.
Yeah.
He's an assassin. Yeah.
He's a good player, but he's not a great player. Maybe he gets paid and people think they're going to get it. I can't figure out Brandon Cooks, but he's an upgrade for the Cowboys. I will say that. And same with Stephon Gilmore. Those were their 2 big issues. They didn't have that second receiver behind CD Lamb. Michael Gallup was still coming back from the ACL. They really struggled when their corner got hurt. I forget who it was, but their second corner got hurt after Trayvon Diggs. Now they have Stephon Gilmore, and who's aging, but he knows how to play, Damo. And Brandon Cooks is a good player. On paper, they're a better team.
Yeah. One thing that I'm curious about is, they cut Zeke. Tony Pollard's never had more than 200 carries in a season. So they're going to have to, I don't know how they're going to split carries there. Hell, they may even re-sign Zeke here at the if he doesn't sign with somebody else, because there's not a lot of interest in him. So maybe he's starting to realize his price isn't what he thought it was, and the Dallas would be the best spot for him. I think if they get him back, or they get somebody that can really be a short yardage plus for them, like Zeke was last year, it's certainly going to make them more difficult, because last year 3rd and 1 was automatic for the Cowboys.
Right. Yeah. I'm very curious year 2 under Dable what the Giants look like. Daniel Jones gets his contract. Yeah. We know things are still up in the air for Saquon. They add some weapons. Waller comes in there. That's going to be interesting to me. I mean, I don't want to say they snuck up on people, because that would take away from what I think Dable did with the turnaround there. But year 2 of this is going to be is fascinating to me in New York.
Yeah, I like the Giants. I mean, I've liked Daniel Jones from since he came out of Duke, when everybody in New York was trashing him. I mean, I just thought that if you put a good line in front of him, give him some receivers, he can be a very good quarterback, and that's what he showed last year, even with limited receiving help. Now they've helped themselves there. I think they're going to be a better offense. He's got more weapons. I think you're going to see better numbers out of Daniel Jones. And so the big question is what's going to happen with Barkley, how the whole franchise tag thing is going to affect him, and whether he can stay healthy. But yeah, that's a team that the Eagles have to be concerned about.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Giants are going in the right direction, Damo, and that's a good thing, because ever since they moved on really from Coughlin and Jerry Reese, they making bad decisions, bad coaches, bad personnel. Dave Gettleman, God love you, but man, he struggled with the Giants. So I think they're going in the right direction finally, but I just don't think the talent is there. I think they overachieved. I think they're still rebuilding. And when somebody tells me Darren Waller, if he's healthy, great player. But when your top threat is a tight end, I don't care who it is. Maybe Kansas City can argue with Travis Kelce. I don't like a tight end being the guy on offense. That kind of bothers me. So I think Daniel Jones, they still need to get him more help. I think the Giants may be a little bit susceptible to taking a step back, only because I think they admit they didn't think they were going to be that good last year. So,
yeah,
maybe they overachieved a little. That's how I look at the Giants. But Eagles fans should be concerned, because long-term, I think Daboll's a good coach. I think Joe Shane's a good GM, and that's going to be a problem. It just might not be a problem for a couple years. I don't think they're ready right now. A little early for them.
Well, I mean, they certainly don't have the depth that the Eagles have. I mean, that's the lesson Howie's learned over the years, is that, I mean, you can have some great players, but, I mean, injuries in this league pretty much determine who's going to win and who's going to, who's going to be there at the end. And he's seen years where his offensive line has been decimated and things didn't go well. He's seen other positions, same thing. So he's gotten to the point now where he's tried to make sure that everyone, I mean, you can't have every position covered anymore. I mean, with the cap but he's done a good job of getting close to that. I mean, they've got depth at where you want to have depth. The lines, you're right. The offensive line isn't as deep as it was last year, but it's still better than most. I mean, I mean, still that position would be the one that concerns me, even though they're ranked number 1 in the league right now, because they had their starters missed 3 games to injury last year.
It's crazy.
I mean, that's just incredible. And, I hate to say it, but that just doesn't happen. And especially 2 years in a row. So you worry about that. I mean, you look at the numbers, since the cap came about in 94, 1 Super Bowl runner-up has made it back to the Super Bowl. Most of them have fallen by the wayside in the first or second round, or not even made the playoffs, because something usually happens the next year. You don't play as well. I mean, you can go through the list of
you
why.
Lose coaches.
Yeah. You lose coaches sometimes. Both. Injuries. You're playing late into the into the year,
Yeah,
and
that's a big
you never
thing
have
as
a
well.
chance to kind of
Yeah.
get recovered. So we'll see. I mean, they're still on paper best team in the division, probably the first or second best team in the NFC.
Yeah, and they're it's a strange dichotomy because they're in a very, I think, a challenging division, as we just talked about. But overall, the conference doesn't compare to the AFC. I mean, you look at some of they're just going to cannibalize each other. A lot of these teams. The AFC East is nasty. I'll tell you, the North, I think, is a little bit underrated in the AFC also. But that's not even to mention the Chiefs and Seattle.
Very good division.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if Deshaun Watson gets back to being Deshaun Watson?
I think it's the most underrated storyline in the NFL going into the season.
Yeah.
The lopsidedness of franchise quarterbacks right now in conference to conference is just amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, beyond Jalen in the NFC, I mean, there aren't a lot of, there aren't, I mean, you look at the AFC, oh my God, you're right. They're just going to be, I mean, those games, each week, those games are going to be great to watch, but they're going to end up with a lot of teams that are going to be, going late into the season at 6-6 and 7-5.
Quality teams not getting in the playoffs in that conference. I mean, just flat out.
Yeah. And we're trying to find quality teams in the NFC. I'm expecting Detroit to take a jump, Seattle.
I think Atlanta's a little dangerous. I think if Ritter plays well, they're a little dangerous.
But that's a loaded. If Ritter plays well, that scares me, Rob. If Ritter plays well, we're talking about AFC North. We're talking about Joe Burrow. We're talking about Lamar Jackson. We're talking about Deshaun Watson. And we're saying, hey, if Ritter plays well, the Eagles.
It's true.
The Eagles, I'm not picking on you, Rob, but the Eagles have a great situation when it comes to quarterbacks. I mean, who is number 2? You can make an argument, Dak. I've made the argument it might be Jared Goff.
Goff had a great year.
Yeah.
That's another one. I'm really curious to see what it looks like again. He's got nice weapons. But what it looks like again.
Well, one suspended for 6 games.
That's
true. That's an issue.
That's true.
Jameson Williamson, he was coming back. So, but I mean, Kirk Cousins is a good player, but he's a lame duck, and Minnesota's pretty much declared they're going to move on. So that's never a good situation when you announce either the coach or the quarterback is a lame duck. Derek Carr, maybe making the move, an AFC quarterback making the move. New Orleans might be a surprise.
I think New Orleans is dangerous too. I don't know about Dennis Allen as a coach, but I think they're dangerous. And were you able to find out about Kamara at any point? If there's anything coming down there, I'd probably go Dak number 2, if and then Carr 3. But Dak's got a lot to prove, as Damo pointed out earlier. He was a pick 6 machine last year.
Yeah,
but
a lot of turnovers.
He's a guy that I'd bet on if you're looking for a comeback guy, because I mean he knows people have buried him. He knows people think he was a fraud. So I'd be if I'm the Eagles, I'm concerned about what kind of season he's going to come back and have. So,
Damo, what do you want to see Hurts get better at?
Red zone, and he got better at on third down last year. He got better on the deep ball. Red zone. They're a unique team in that they ran the ball mostly in the red zone and a lot with him. I mean, 13 rushing touchdowns. But if he can improve as a passer in the red zone, I mean, they'll be unstoppable inside the 20. I mean, they were pretty close to that last year. I think they finished 4th or 5th in the league in red zone offense. But that's where I think he need one spot he could use to take the next step.
Are you in the camp, Damo, that the Eagles have to change? You mentioned the effectiveness, but it was 22 passing touchdowns versus 13 rushing touchdowns. To me, 35 touchdowns is 35 touchdowns. I don't care how he gets it in the end zone. He got it in the end zone. But you have this mentality that, he's going to get hurt if he runs the football. Nick's on record saying we're not paying him more to do less. And when you run an RPO based offense, it's basically up to what the defense does, whether he's going to run the football or not. They're not necessarily designed run calls. So Shane Steichen, in between F-bombs, used to tell me this all the time behind the scenes, Damo. Not a lot of called design run plays for Jalen Hurts in this offense. And I think the perception is that there were. How do you, if you don't call a lot of design run plays, but he's running the football a lot because you're calling RPOs,
you got to hand it off to the running back. And what else are you going to do?
then it's not an RPO. Right?
I know.
It's a handoff. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, one area I think they could reduce some of the carries, and you're right. I mean, I don't think I've said since he got there that I mean, it's running is part of his game and you don't take it away. At the same time, 165 carries last year, that adds up. You know, granted, like 40 of them are on those quarterback sneaks, which, you know, he's great at. You don't ever want to eliminate those. Yeah. Yep. You don't ever want to eliminate those because it's such a, you know, I mean, thankfully for them, the league did not outlaw it.
Push.
So I mean, 4th and 1, 3rd and 1 is going to be automatic again for them. But where he could eliminate some runs is if he to get more comfortable in the pocket, learn how to move around a little bit better, and find that receiver in an extra second, rather than just take off and run. I mean, he's pretty patient considering his background. I mean, he learned to adapt, but there's still, you know, areas there where I think you could cut out some of the runs and still have big plays where he could throw it. You know, I mean, we're just, you know, he steps up instead of runs outside. You know, he's not comfortable. He wasn't comfortable doing that last year totally. So I think that's probably one of the things he's worked on in the off season. We'll see. But, you know, I mean, I don't ever want to see him stop running because I think it's such a, you know, I mean, he's got a fullback's body, which is different than pretty much any quarterback who's, you know, I mean, Lamar Jackson can't take the hits that Jalen can, but still Jalen's, you know, you don't want him at the end of the season with a banged up shoulder, you know, in your most important games. So I think they got to bring the 165 down to 130 maybe. We'll see how they do that.
Yeah, I was surprised that I went back and looked at this, and Justin Fields, who I would have thought had more rushing attempts than Jalen, had 5 less. That was surprising to me. He had 160, and then it was, I think, Daniel Jones at 120, and then Lamar Jackson only in like 12 games had 112. He would have had the most. But yeah, I'm with you guys. Like, I don't want to all of a sudden have him strapped in the pocket. Why would you take away that kind of athleticism? But there is a fine line. I mean, you don't want to put him at risk as much, but I think we go overboard with he can't run anymore. You know, it's like, no, you don't want to do that either. And I get it and you know what? The Eagles were pretty upfront about that. Like, we don't want to take away from who he is. Nick said that almost immediately. And I didn't think that was just bluster. I think it was real.
Yeah. No, I think it's very real. I think he calls it a superpower. Why would you take a superpower away? So I agree with Nick there. You know, Damo, I wanted to mention at the 33rd team, I thought you wrote an interesting piece. Who's next? College football coaches who could make the NFL leap. Couple things I wanted to ask. First of all, for people that don't know, when the Eagles moved on from Doug Peterson, one of their first calls, might have been their first call, was to Lincoln Riley to see if Lincoln was interested in making the move. And I know one of the guys you mentioned was Matt Campbell, who's very close to Nick Sirianni. And he's been on the NFL's radar for a while. Curious, number one, how NIL has changed the perception of some of these college coaches, because it's like the wild, wild west. People thinking, you know, I don't know. If I'm a college coach, I'm looking for the ripcord. Maybe not Nick Saban, who's already, you know, he knows how good it is at Alabama compared to how difficult it is at the NFL when everybody's got the even playing field. How has that changed the perception of these high-profile college coaches and maybe looking to make that leap?
Well, it's made a lot more of them more willing to consider options if they're there to jump to the NFL, because Nil and the transfer portal have just made college a crazy,
Yeah, said
crazy.
that too. Yeah, should have mentioned that.
Yeah. If you're a Matt Campbell, you're already not getting 5-star recruits because of this program you have. He trying to, you got guys, if they're not happy with you one day, they're in the transfer portal the next.
It's true.
You got to have the boosters. I saw yesterday where some quarterback, I can't remember who recruited him, but he just signed a deal. Some dealership's giving him the top of the line Mercedes, and that's just the start of it. I mean, if you're not one of these elite programs, you don't have the money to play that game. So it's just very uneven. It's more aggravation than these guys ever thought they would have when they got into college coaching. So the problem is, on the other side of the fence, not many college coaches have been successful. I mean, Harbaugh has when he came to the 49ers. So that's kind of made some teams a little bit reluctant to consider college coaches, especially if they haven't had any NFL experience in their background. But there are
Chip, you were around Chip for years. Now, hey, Chip was a what at times, but do people realize how much Chip Kelly changed the NFL? Because he did.
Unbelievable.
I mean, the whole league basically plays like Chip did now. Now he didn't.
Yeah.
I don't think Chip had that sort of filter, Damo, in that look. It's not 22-year-olds. Like, he was dealing with Jason Peters. You can't run him into the ground with tempo. And I think Bill Belichick did a great job, who loved Chip Kelly, by the way. He did a great job filtering what Chip did well with tempo and Tom Brady. But in hindsight, how much do you think Chip's impact on the NFL has been, I don't want to say underrated, but maybe understated?
I think the biggest impact he's had, John, maybe has not been so much on X's and O's as it has been on science. He was the first guy. He was the first guy to come up with ways, changing practice schedules to maximize performance, things like that. On the field, he couldn't find moderation. I remember talking to Lane Johnson after Chip got fired, and
I never saw Lane happier.
Before that, Lane had never uttered a bad word about Chip Kelly. After Chip left, he just let go. Talking about how he was just killing, shortening careers, killing offensive linemen with that system. But by the same token, for 2 years they were 10-6. I mean, Chip Kelly's problem was not that he couldn't win games with, it was that he couldn't communicate with people. Getting back to his biggest impact, I think it was actually sports science.
I think so. I think it was two things. He didn't get along with people, and that's part of the job. And
big part. Maybe
not understanding that you do have to tamper it back every once in a while. And that was it. But you're right. There's still a massive influence to this day. All the stuff that people still scream about with the sports science and the maintenance days. And Chip was way ahead of his time with that kind. It's a shame he couldn't understand the other part. He just alienated
had no
too many
filter. He couldn't see the bad stuff and just try to filter that out.
Yep.
And that's why I brought up Bill, because Bill, loved the tempo aspect of Chip Kelly. He used to invite him before he became a coach. He used to invite him to pick his mind. But Chip was like, go, 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 never stop.
Yeah.
And Bill's like, well, no, we only got 53 players. And when you have a 2-touchdown lead, and you have a quarterback that can milk the clock, then you kind of pull back. You have the dampener switch, whatever you want to call it. Chip never got that part of it, which But yeah, getting along with people is kind of a big deal.
It's a big deal when you're a head coach of a football team.
Yeah.
Damo, back to
any profession, yes, huh?
That's a good point. Not just a head football coach. Present day, Damo. I haven't had a chance to talk to you about this. The running back situation. How do you view it with the Eagles? How do you view it in terms of, is it just ride the hot hand? Is it understanding that these guys have had an injury history and maybe you don't want to be pounding certain guys? It's kind of a four-headed monster with two in the lead, role. How do you look at it?
I think it's going to be a by committee deal, Rob. Which is kind of what they've been. Even when Miles was here, they weren't exactly wearing him to death. What I like the Swift pickup. I mean, he and Gainwell give them probably the best two pass catching running backs in the league, and not just dumping it to them out of the backfield. About with Gainwell, you've got a guy that can run wide receiver routes. You can do anything with him. So I'm going to be interested to see, how Nick uses these guys, how Brian Johnson uses these guys. But I think pretty much we're going to see a cycling here with those two and Boston Scott he'll have his role. It won't be, as a third down back, I don't think, but he'll be there when the Giants
when the Giants show up. Yeah.
That's right.
Break glass in case of
That's
the
it.
Giants.
He's ready.
Yeah.
He's ready.
Yeah. Boston Scott. Swift is interesting. Last one for me. Make sure you follow Paul on Twitter at PDamo. You can read him at the 33rd team. Does a tremendous job there. We just mentioned his piece on college coaches in season, JAKIBsports.com. WBCB. I always got to get that right. Merrill Station.
Yes.
Does work there as well.
You're everywhere, man. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Prolific.
Retired. Damo never retired. Author to be as well. I'll throw that in there. With Swift, though, Damo, and you mentioned the receiving ability, and I'm with you. Like, if Swift and Gainwell were on the Chargers, like Austin Eckler, and you had the more traditional quarterback like Justin Herbert, I think they'd already be like, 70, 80 catch guys. Swift has already caught 60 in Detroit. So he's already done it. I don't think that part of it is as important in this offense because Jalen's not going to dump the football off. He's not dumping it off to the back because he's going to go get more than the back is going to get. However, I think more design plays, and one thing they did in the spring, Damo, was when they went to those empty sets and still throwing those stupid bubble screens to the receivers, they were throwing it to DeAndre Swift. I like that because those bubble screens, you got to make that first guy miss, and a running back can do that.
Yeah, Reagor was great at that, John.
Yeah, well, yeah.
No. Kidding.
Exactly.
All right.
Quez, come on. It's not going to work, and it's a very ugly play when it doesn't work. Non-aesthetic. I think Swift could really help on something like that. Those types of, we have a man advantage, let's throw it out there. He could break that first tackle.
John, I think you and I disagree on the dump off definition because if you look at, I think back to the playoffs where they started, I think Gainwell had like 7 catches in the playoffs. A lot of them they would circle him out underneath. I mean, you talked about Jalen being able to just, take what's there when he needed to. Well, if you're trying to cut down on his carries, that's another place to do it. If you've got Gainwell or Swift wide open 10 yards down the field, where they just on a circle, just a simple circle route where everybody else is concerned with Goddard and A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith, and this guy's wide open, you take it. And because those guys, both Swift and Gainwell are so good at yards after the catch, those plays could turn into something big. So, I mean, that's why I think getting Swift and using Gainwell more this year in a pass catching role are going to be so vital to that offense.
Good stuff. Damo, good stuff, man. We appreciate you hopping on with us for a couple of minutes. And John just laid out everywhere You can catch Paul's work, but also just follow him on Twitter at @PDamo. Damo, thanks, man. Always good catching up with you.
Thank you, guys. Take care.
Appreciate it,
Thanks,
Paul Domowitch. Great thoughts there. I'm John. Are you like me? I don't know how much of a summer guy you are, but I love the warmer weather. Okay, but I get to this point in the year where we're just about in July. What are we? June 29th, whatever it is. So we're less than a month away from training camp, but it's also we're in like the early stages of the summer. So I have to fight my brain over wanting to fast forward to get to football season versus enjoy the summer. Do you have that eternal tug and pull that I have, or no?
Not to that degree, because well, I got to cover the team on a daily basis. So once
your work's going to get cranked up.
Yeah, it's going to get cranked up. But I'm kind of to the point where we just talked about with Chip changing practice schedules and all that kind of stuff. Boy, training camp is not as exciting as it once was. Yeah. Like, I have a tough time taking any of it seriously. I got to ramp up taking it seriously.
Right.
Because they practice so little. And it's all about, let's be honest, it's about getting to week one as healthy as possible. And I get it. I get why they do that. And then you sort of play your way into shape, for the lack of a better phrase. Mm-hmm. And the Eagles have some veteran players, the core four, so to speak. Jason Kelce doesn't need training camp.
No.
Now, on the other hand, it's really important for the younger players. One we're hoping to get, and we're not going to get, Milton Williams. We have to talk about
it's that. We'll let the folks know in a second. Yeah.
But and we're going to get Zach McPherson tomorrow. So hopefully that makes up for it. But so I'm kind of torn is what I'm trying to say, Rob. Yeah. I don't think it's important for the veteran players, the Kelce's of the world, the Fletches, BG. They're going to be ready.
Right.
They know what it takes. They're professionals. But it is really important for the younger players. And this is a team that is trying to serve those two masters. So how do you get work in for Jalen Carter and keep everybody as fresh as possible? Well, the veteran players, you're going to have a ton of maintenance days that we saw last year. You're going to have these big injury lists. It cracked me up every time. During the season, we would have these massive injury lists on whether it was Wednesday or Thursday, the Eagles would decry it as maintenance day.
Right.
And no matter what, people would get scared. And you would say, this is just how they do business. This is maintenance. This is how you get through this season. So, and then, Rob, you have this one cut. It's not, back in the day, you used to have those increments. You cut from 90 to 85.
Yeah.
Go back even further, you'd have 90 to 85, 85 to 80.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's 90 to 53. Bang.
Yeah, it is a one fell swoop.
Yeah. And by the way, what does that mean? 90 to 53. Those 3 preseason games, you're going to have those 90 players for all of them.
Yeah.
So that means even less work for the starters in preseason.
Well, let me ask you this. I'm going to get a quick timeout in, John. I want to ask you about how much you think we may. I know it's only 3 games now, and I know the joint practices hold a lot more weight. But how much do you think we'll see the Nakobe Deans, the Jordan Davises, the Jalen Carters, the Nolan Smiths, perhaps, in those kind of games? And we'll let folks know what we have over the course of the next hour, too, when we get back. So let's get a quickie in here, John, and we'll come back and we'll continue with the Eagles discussion. He is John McMullen. I'm Rob Ellis. I'm in for Jody Mack today. Great to be hanging with you here on Birds